And we are live. So, for everybody watching this on YouTube, don't forget to like, subscribe, hit the notification button. For those of you that are watching live, make sure to hit us up in the chat, and we'll answer any questions that you have as we go about talking about Chapter 8 in the Player's Handbook for 5th Edition Dungeons & Dragons. And we are going to be talking about social interactions. And I believe this ends Chapter 8.
Yes.
Okay. So we are on the last part of Chapter 8. um, for everybody that doesn't know, my name is Jesse Klein. I am the DM for the live table. I also play Darius on the on a roll 20 game, and I'm also the hands that you see and the beautiful face that you see while doing DM crafting. Joining me today is again Anthony. Say hi,
Hi
Anthony.
guys.
Hi, guys.
Hi
Uh,
guys.
um, who plays in our Sunday game right now. He was one of the adventurers in the Adventure League for a short time, but we play a Sunday game together. And you DM too, right?
My game that I DM is on hiatus for the summer. The schedule's kind of went completely sideways
Okay.
of my players, so we're trying to pick that up. We're trying to pick that up after Labor Day. Yeah, like we got into summer, and one of my players is like, cause we like it was on the opposite Sundays from when we play, in person, and then I also have a game that I play every Saturday night,
Okay.
and my one player was like fishing constantly, and then another one got like a promotion. He worked at a power plant down in Tennessee, and he got a promotion, and he had played from work because that's how they rolled, and he could no longer do that after he got promoted.
Yeah.
So we're kind of on hiatus, but yeah, I do have a little bit of experience.
Okay. And then also joining us there is Josh. He is the DM for the On a Roll Roll 20 game that we play every other Monday. So go ahead and say hi, Josh.
Hi, Josh.
He also played Torrent in the Adventures Guild, which you can check out in the YouTube. We have some of the videos there. Took hiatus on the Adventurers Guild. Just a lot of conflict of schedules, and um, we weren't running it the way that we wanted to, so we kind of stepped back from it for a little bit. Um, Soon we'll be starting up our roll. Let's roll one-off challenge, which I think Anthony, you didn't get a chance to play that yet, but
I did not, but I am like beyond looking forward to that.
yeah,
That sounds like an absolute blast. The Rona has kind of hurt our sales at work, so Friday nights are. I mean, I know you guys are rescheduling it, but my schedule's a lot looser now than it was. So
yeah. Unfortunately, with my work schedule, it's
no, yeah,
yeah,
I get it. We're all adults. It's tough.
yeah, kind of kills me
Speak
because
for yourself.
the kids, me and the kids do, Hershey Park and stuff on Fridays, and we go out and we do stuff.
I get it. I
It's
get it.
you know,
I mean, I'm not gonna say I wasn't bummed when you guys canceled that, but
yeah, no, I was bummed
it
too.
is it is what it is, you know.
Yeah, it's like I was bummed too. It's just, you know, trying to spend as much time with the kids while they're young, and then when they grow up
No,
and leave me
absolutely.
and not
I
want
mean,
anything.
you're making the right choice. It's just that right choices sometimes come with negative consequences.
Yeah.
So it's just
Um, but we're
that's
gonna
life.
we're gonna start that up soon. We just got to figure out the whole scheduling thing, I think. Um, uh, and we might yeah. Either way. So right now we stream pretty much 4 nights a week, Monday through Thursday right now. Um, but we're probably gonna tack something on here shortly. Um, yeah. So that being said, uh, let's begin with our conversation on social interaction. Um, So Josh, going from the handbook where we left off, social interaction. Give me a little snidbit from the handbook.
Oh, I was gonna say I knew nothing about social interaction. I'm a gamer.
Yeah, the funny thing, like that's what I love about this game so much, right? D&D itself, because like a decent amount of the players are like antisocial, and it's like one of the most social interactive games that you can play. So
Well,
it takes you.
well, then on top of that, you get like, depending on what classes when you have a social player who plays a charismatic character, it goes well. But then it's always funny to see like the social players playing characters that use charisma as a dump stat and things like that, and then you get like a sorcerer that's completely antisocial, and you're like, dude, like,
Yeah.
Or force a character to be social with an ogre.
Well,
yeah,
um, I think one of my favorite people that I can kind of attest to what you're saying there is like Albie, right? So
hmm
like if you know Albie, he's like completely opposite of the characters that he plays. So like he was a friend of my sister's for a while, and I knew that he was into like computers and sound and stuff like that. So I brought him on to literally sit behind the computer and
hmm
like hit buttons and make sure the sound was good and stuff like that with the equipment that I have. It's not the greatest equipment, so if you have somebody that's running it and knows how to run it, you can get uh
producer, I believe is what they're called.
yeah, yeah, and that's pretty much what he was running. He was doing the whole producer end. And then we lost some players on the live table, and I was like, "Hey, I mean, you're here. Do you just want to play?" Like,
Yeah. I got to play with him a couple times with Adventurers Guild. He was playing
Slugs.
the
slugs.
slugs. That's what it
Yeah.
was. Yeah, the goblin gunslinger. And that was him. His gunslinger and my sorcerer were the only ones to make it out of that death trap that you had set up. Um, but yeah, he was enjoyable to play with.
Yeah, and it's just funny because like he's always been around like when the kids had birthday parties or something like that. Um, and he's like the quietest guy in the world. And then you set him down to play D&D, and like Noob is just a whore. He's like it's just funny. And then Slugs is like very outspoken and yeah, like he role plays really really well. Like he doesn't understand the mechanics of the game uh
Y- Yeah, that
awesome,
yeah.
but what he lacks in knowledge of the game cuz he's only been playing with us for a little while and this is his first time playing.
Right. Yeah.
So what he lacks in knowledge of the game, he really 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 makes up for in role playing. And yeah, it's probably one of my favorite characters. Um, well, favorite players as far as like how they switch. They turn that switch on. You know, um, it's just it's cool to see somebody do that. And like it's funny too, because like even when we take breaks and stuff on our Monday games, like you see his entire like body language, the whole nine change.
Oh
We
yeah.
go on break and he's just like, oh, okay. And then we play and he's like sitting up straight and he's like, you know what I mean? Like he's goofing off and he's having a good time. And that's what I really like about the game. I mean, the social interaction, nowadays you get, you know, this aside from like video games. Like, yes, you do have your like online games that you can play and you get some social interaction. This, though, it's even more so because even with the quests that you can pick up. You know what I mean? Like you play Skyrim or even Skyrim Online, and the NPCs are very dry. They tell you what you need, and that's it. where D&D, like, it kind of pulls you into the world, and it, you know, if you can get into that kind of stuff, it really opens people up, and it's cool. It's cool to watch. It's what's that?
That's like your character, Darius. I mean, just so for those that don't know or haven't seen it, Anthony, his bard is absolutely hilarious. I mean, he is raunchy. He just flirted with a lesbian with a fiance. Like,
Yeah, I like playing that character. I enjoy playing, and I never thought that I would like playing a bard. But I mean, I'm playing him as a bard, but like sort of not. It's just the class that best suited what I wanted to do. Um, but that's, I mean, Anthony, you play with me on Sundays. Like almost every one of my characters are different when I play them.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, we didn't really get the chance to flesh out our Mad Mage characters. I mean, we went
Yeah,
three or four sessions with that, and that was, there was a lot of mitigating factors there too. I think that was Brandon's first time DMing,
yep,
and I think that there is an additional challenge to start DMing for a level 5 campaign.
yeah, yeah,
Because things are a lot different. I mean, he threw 5 mana cores at us, or 3 mana cores rather, and
yeah,
it didn't go that bad. Like, I
yeah.
think Becky got knocked out, but what else is new?
I don't think anybody died, so that was good.
No, they didn't. I mean, they would have if he would have, followed the script. But
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, it was his first time DMing,
yeah,
and
I mean,
I turned the corner and walk into a fucking gelatinous cube. Like
yeah,
it was fun.
yeah. It was definitely fun. But yeah, I mean, you're and honestly, we really haven't done that much RP yet on the other one either. But yeah, your characters are pretty mechanically different for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like I said, the RP hasn't really fleshed out quite, but like I wouldn't say they all. I do, but I do know what you mean because like I do play with somebody who like all of their characters are distinct classes, but they all act the same.
Yeah.
It's like,
yeah.
like I feel like forcing him into an evil campaign.
gee, Jesse, who does that sound like when 2 of her characters met?
Oh yeah, so the last session for Josh's, and we haven't put them up on YouTube yet because I'm like super far behind. But so Becky's character, Thrice, just bumped into Dewdrop from.
I thought Dewdrop was dead.
No, she was turned to stone.
Oh.
But she
Okay.
still had the necklace on, which Darius almost stole, just for shits and giggles. But yeah, so like it was just a fun little addition that Josh made. But yeah, I mean,
they ended up running off together, and Dewdrop taught Thrice how to swim. Not very well, but how to swim.
Yeah, it was just it was a thing. But the social interaction to me makes Dungeons and Dragons. You know, it's role playing for a reason, and it's not because you rolled dice. It's role playing. And some people don't get me wrong. You don't have to throw voices if you want to. Cool. Some of my characters I don't feel comfortable throwing voices. I actually feel less comfortable using voices when I DM than I do when I play a character. Because when I have a shit ton of voices that I need to remember, it's hard. But when I role play like a character, I can kind of stay in that character and keep the voice consistent.
Yeah, absolutely. Voices are tough, especially when you know, I can remember when my party got to Phandalin in Lost Mines, and it's like, it was one of those. They're going to the inn, they're going to the store, they're going to, the town master, they're going to and it's like, man, like all the voices sounded the fucking same.
Yeah.
Some sounded like chicks, some sounded like dudes. They all, other than that, all sounded the same. And I really wish I would have thought that out a little bit more. Um, because it at a certain point it feels kind of like I don't know, a trope or it doesn't feel. I don't like the way it felt. I wish I would have gone through and decided on some more unique voices for fewer people.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and that's, I mean, I've been DMing for a little while. Um, and I'm just now kind of getting into it. You know what I mean? Like finding ways to minimize what kind of voices I use because I don't have a lot. I really don't. You know, every every barkeep is Scottish. You know, but there's a couple of things that I found as a DM that kind of help out, and it's that
Yeah,
the magic of the index card.
yeah, absolutely. And that's a skill all unto itself. I mean,
Hmm.
it's one thing to pull off a accent for a little bit, but like when you're actually trying to converse with it, it's I get hung up
Yeah.
because like I'll get to a vowel or something and I'm like, hold on, which way should this vowel go in this weird accent that I'm trying to pull off, and then it just comes like half out going two ways, if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yep. No. Absolutely. That's it. You know. But again, you don't need to do voices if you feel that you want to. You know, a lot of people don't feel comfortable doing them, and that's fine too. Um, if like I drop octaves for most of my characters. You know what I mean? So my female characters, I'll raise an octave or two
Mhm.
or eight. Um, but my some of my male characters, like my character that I play on Sunday, all I do is drop an octave. That's it. Because that's kind of how I seen the character.
Yeah, and I think to what you were saying about DMing with NPCs and stuff, like the only one that you did that was memorable for me when you DM'd for our in person game was that I said it's memorable. I can't remember the fucking guy's name. That
Uh,
Guz Gur Gum
uh, oh, yeah, man. I know exactly what you're talking about.
the purple
Uh,
gnome dude.
yeah. Oh shit. Now I can't remember his name.
Anyways,
Yeah,
that's so like my point being like I don't remember if you did voices for anybody else,
not
but I
really.
don't remember if you did voices for anybody else. So like
Yeah, and
you, to me that says fewer voices, more unique voices
yeah,
when you do
and
them.
and that was the first one that I used the index card trick on. And
Hmm.
like on my index card, it literally said voice Cheech and Chong.
Yeah.
Like that's it. That's all it said. Cheech and Chong. So like, and you want to keep that index card clean and organized. So you want to keep it and take. You might not nail. You might not nail Dirty Harry, But the reality is nobody knows that you're using Dirty Harry as a reference,
Right.
right? Like, and if they do, they're like, oh, that sounds like Dirty Harry. But even if you jack it up completely, who cares? It's not Dirty Harry. I'm
Correct.
using that as a reference in my head to say this is what I want it to sound like.
And it goes beyond just. I mean, you can role play a character beyond just coming up with a voice for them.
Oh yeah.
I mean, you can absolutely emote through mannerisms, through describing kind of some of their body language twitches that they have
Mm-hmm.
and things like that. It's not just you know voices. I mean, there's a lot more to it than that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you have two distinct characters when you have even adding the same voice, um, but the way that they speak. It might be the same voice, but the things that come out of his mouth are different. His or her mouth.
Mhm.
Like, you can have a completely different character if the dude is a complete asshole versus somebody that's just there to give you information. He's there, he's helpful, he's, you know,
Well, and not to compare players to voice actors because I don't like going down that kind of rabbit hole because at the end of the day we're not professionals, right?
right.
Players aren't professionals. A lot of DMs that no DM that I play with is a professional, and I imagine that that's a pretty common thing. I do understand that there are professional DMs though. Um, but even just to use an example, a lot of the times when you see these animated movies with bigger casts, you'll have multiple characters played by the same person.
Yeah.
And you can tell it's their voice, but they're using different mannerisms, they're using different pacing in speech,
Yeah.
to differentiate. And not that you wouldn't know if you didn't know, but it's not typically it's not very obvious.
Right. Yeah, I agree.
I think one of my favorite characters that I've always loved watching, Chris Perkins and his character Shemeska,
Yeah.
which is
Yeah.
I just loved how he played her because it was like a really risque, foxy voice.
Yeah, and the funny thing about Chris Perkins is probably one of the best DMs I've ever seen. But if you really watch and you spend time watching, he doesn't have that many voices.
Oh no.
You know what I mean? But he still makes it so interesting. 90%, like I would say 80% of his male characters sound, feminine or you know, it's just funny to me that somebody that's so good has so few voices versus Matt Mercer who has 8,000 voices that he can just throw out.
I'm pretty sure that's because he hears them all in his head.
Yeah, there's something wrong with him in a good way,
Yeah.
but there's definitely something wrong with him for our entertainment purposes.
Right. But I think with something like that, also, that's a trained skill. That's not
Yeah.
something that people can just do. I'm not saying that there are no savants in this, but generally speaking, that's a trained skill. I mean, if you want to get into singing, typically you're gonna hire a voice coach to help you with that.
Yep.
Um, and if you get into different languages, like different languages use different sounds, and it can be really difficult, especially later in life, to start speaking those languages because your mouth muscles don't make those shapes and that
Yep.
are required to make those noises.
Yep.
It's just, it's not. If you have an issue with voices, don't get discouraged. It's more than just you not trying hard enough or whatever.
Yep.
Not having enough creativity. Like there's a lot of mechanics to it. There's a lot of things that go into it.
Yeah.
Is what I'm saying.
Yep. So that was our first tangent of the night.
Yeah, we haven't even
touched on it yet.
Yeah. Yeah. Voices are not touched in fucking social interaction.
Nope.
Oh,
man.
So.
By the way, Jesse, I don't know if you know this, but Matt Mercer also is a voice actor. He did a lot of voices on like Full Metal Alchemist.
Oh yeah.
He did a lot of anime voices.
Yeah, a lot of anime, a lot of video games. I mean all of them. They all do their work. I mean, perfect voice actor. I mean, other than Matt Mercer in that game, is I've for the life of me. And so I started watching Critical Role at season 2. Never really got into 1. I don't know why. Like I like the story, but I just can't. I can't follow it. But I swore to God that was Jester's voice. I swore to God. And when I heard for 1 minute her speak in a real voice, I was like, what the fuck just happened? Not only that, but I know her voice because Trunks is one of my favorite characters from DBZ. And she was the voice for Trunks.
I wasn't sure where you were going with that because I'm like, wait, was Seth Green on Critical Role?
No. No. So I couldn't. It took me like even after hearing it and realizing that Jester was a character, it still took me 2 or 3 days to go, yeah, that's not her voice. Holy fuck. That's really not her voice.
I mean, I can understand what you're saying. I mean, I remember, this is gonna be a little bit more obscure, but this is 15 years ago. Jesus, we're getting old. They had a series on Sci-Fi, Battlestar Galactica, and there was an actor, Jamie Bamber, on that who is from the UK, from somewhere in the UK, and he didn't play it on the show. He played an American accent. First time you see him on the behind the scenes, and he starts, or like Hugh Laurie. Now Hugh Laurie is older, and there's a lot more. But like, if your first exposure to him was on House, and then
never knew.
Yeah, exactly.
When he first spoke, I went, "Who the fuck is this guy?" Like. Yeah. No, it's awesome. I mean, but they're trained to do that. I mean, even most actors aren't trained to do that. They're trained to do like certain accents, but some actors go their entire career without doing one accent.
Well, yeah, I mean, and we make jokes about it depending on what you're talking about. I mean, Jean-Luc Picard is a Frenchman with an English accent. How the fuck does that make sense? Because Patrick Stewart was like, I ain't doing a French accent.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how that went. Or Sean Connery. Sean Connery's like a perfect example. Doesn't matter what fucking character he plays, right? He's gonna come in with that Sean Connery accent.
Yep.
I mean, he's what, a Russian sub-commander?
Russian sub-commander. Up periscope. Nope. I was a dragon in Braveheart. Yeah. Oh. Oh, jeez. Yeah. Sean Connery. I love Sean Connery. Um,
Anyway, so we were supposed to talk about something tonight.
don't drop my balls, Nick Cage.
Listen, we're only a half hour in.
Yeah, it's fine. Let's focus.
No more voices talk.
It's so gonna come up in like 10 minutes.
I know.
So the reason we're talking about role voices is the role playing aspect, right? That's the first thing we're talking about.
So it says exploring dungeons, overcoming obstacles, and slaying monsters are key parts to D&D adventures. No less important, though, are the social interactions that adventurers have with other inhabitants of the world. Interactions take many forms. You may need to convince a thief to confess some issues. I'm not reading these words. Yeah, it's like come on, like we're nerds. We're not bookworms. So by this point, if you've read this far into the book, then you know you're not actually playing.
Social interaction. How do I hit shit?
Yeah, exactly. You just skip this part. So it says the DM assumes the roles of any characters who are participating in the interaction that doesn't belong to another player. Any such character is called a non-player character, NPC. In general terms, an NPC attitude towards you is described as friendly, indifferent, or hostile. Friendly ones help you, hostile ones intend to get in your way. It's easier to get what you want from a friendly NPC. And then two primary aspects is role playing and ability checks.
Role playing and role playing.
Yep. So I mean, I guess it did kind of touch on the voice thing, but I think more so is the idea of, as a DM, remember that the world does not revolve around the players. The players are in the world, right? And, Josh and I have talked about this. You don't want to give them a lot of help. You don't want to give the players a lot of help. What I mean by that is you don't want to feed them the help. Make them ask questions. Make them do things to get answers. Make them use, and we're going to get into this, the ability scores, their ability checks. Because that is a big part of the game, or else you wouldn't need those scores. Like you can't just walk into a tavern, and Josh, I'm going to use, again, not bashing what we did last night. I'm going to use that as an example, because you really changed it around on the second half, and I was really happy about that. But you can't just walk into a tavern and expect everybody to give you answers because you're in a tavern. Right? Like the mean bitch that was in the corner that I never got to talk to.
Yeah. She
gave no information. Some of them we had to coax some information out of, and some of us gave us information on possibilities to get information. So it wasn't even like, and I was happy about that on the second half. It was good up until then. I don't want to.
Well, I mean, like the first half, the only person that really gave any information was the stone turtle who you talked to numerous times.
Yeah. Yeah. So, like, as far as and we're still early in the game, you know what I mean, and especially having some new players, you don't want to throw them into the fire quite yet. But like a good example of this is um, when we played Dragon Heist. You There were certain NPCs that would outright give you information, but 90% of the time that was because they were drunk. But for the most part, like we hardly even touched on the main storyline because there was so much other shit going on.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't mean to harp back to it again, but like, you know, that was a really weird combination of characters and campaign
Yeah.
where you know, like we talked about before, we went way harder into the side quests than we probably would have liked to have, but that had a lot to do with who our characters were, and
Mm-hmm.
you know, we didn't really have the social acumen, so to speak, to really navigate that the way that, looking back at it, I would have liked to.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
had one of us been a bard rogue, uh, you know, something that was more,
Apt to get information.
or even if one of us had taken like a courtier background, you know,
Yeah.
that's another thing. Backgrounds are important. Backgrounds are so important.
Mm-hmm.
You know, not just for what bonuses they give and such, but you know, where are you going to be? What's going to be helpful? You know, I'm picking on myself here because I didn't know what the fuck I was doing.
Yeah.
But Outlander background in the middle of the city really isn't
Yep.
helpful.
Well,
Not that we should be power gaming and saying, well, what's this campaign going to do? But at the, like,
No, it's just
there's
as
a fine line.
important. It's just as important as playing a ranger, right? So you're playing a ranger, and your favorite terrain is, desert wasteland, and your 90% of your campaign is in a forest. Like that background's important because that gives you the ability to do certain things, and that's why it's there. You know what I mean? Like if you would have went with a noble background, it's easy for you to go, okay, I want to speak right with Rainier. Like I want to
Correct.
speak with, it gives you the ability to go, oh yeah, you have your papers. Like you're okay. We're gonna take you to somebody that matters.
Right, that's one way to do it. I mean, at that point, I feel like personally, and this is a lot of metagaming and things like that. Personally, I feel like that's kind of circumventing some of those interactions. Um, Whereas if you had, you know, and that's all depending on how you want to get through it.
Yep.
Um, you know, and what your abilities are. Hey, if you want to roll a fighter who you're playing off as a knight or even a paladin, you want to go that way, that might be the perfect way to do it. Paladin are probably not the best example. Fighter ain't gonna have the charisma to get through those conversations.
Yep.
You know, so you know, being a royal and saying, hey, I'm not dealing with these conversations, but I'm gonna be able to progress in a way that suits the campaign is still a positive thing.
Yep.
well, that was like a good example was the Dyla from the game. She was a bard, and the only reason she was talking to you and gave you the time of day is because not only were you a bard, but you made a really good performance check, so you made beautiful music together. Like,
I'll
yeah,
make some later too. Bow chicka wow wow.
like Shredder. The only reason he got information was because he beat the guy in a drinking contest because
Yep.
I rolled poorly, very poorly.
Yeah. Which brings us to ability rolls or ability checks. They have those stats in there for a reason. And the reason is to use them. Not just in combat, not just in exploration, but your charisma heavy characters should be, for the most part, I'm going to say for the most part because it's not always this way, but your charisma heavy characters have the ability to pretty much talk their way through most situations if they're charisma heavy, and their ability scores, their ability checks are based off of those charisma scores. So like your paladin, your warlock, your bards. That being said,
what I will say about that though is that when it comes to things like persuasion, obviously having charisma is going to help you with a persuasion roll.
mm-hmm.
Not saying it won't. You have a bard, or like the bard is the one that comes to mind for me, anyways, because it's a charisma-based class, and it's also very social. So that's something that I would imagine, is the most likely to have high charisma, proficiency / expertise in persuasion, intimidation, deception, insight, the things that you want for like a social encounter. However, the only thing that I'll say is, the other thing that I'll say with that is that your proficiency bonuses, like even if you're a middling charisma character and you have proficiency in intimidation or proficiency in persuasion, you're not doing bad. I mean, your proficiency bonus starts out as a +2, goes to a +3 at 5, a +4 at 9, etc. Like that's still half, more than half. I mean, typically you're going to get to 20, you're going to get to +5, whereas at higher levels you're going to get +6 proficiency bonus. So don't be afraid to make proficiency. I guess what I'm saying is don't be afraid to make proficiency rolls or social rolls even if you have a low or middling charisma.
Yeah,
because your proficiencies can definitely make up for that.
Well, here's the thing too, right? So we're gonna go with Noob, right? Noob is one of the least high charismatic as far as numbers go. But because of some of the shit that he does in game, I will lower DCs because it's good role playing, right? And what I mean by that is you might have the highest charisma score in the world, and you come into a town and you're cocky and you're arrogant and you're pissing people off. But then you're not using intimidation, you're using my brain's fried right now.
Persuasion.
Yeah, persuasion, sorry. You're using persuasion. Well, you were a dick. Like, you rolled in here, you killed 4 motherfuckers, and then you're going to try to persuade them to give you money. That's not going to work. It's going to be a high DC. Where the same person can come, or the same, in the same instant, your fighter who has the charisma is their dump stat, right? But, like, he came in and, he gave some of the kids gold, I don't know, bought some fucking pies and fed the homeless. Your charisma, to me, the DC for the same charisma check is going to be completely different.
Well, absolutely. I mean, that's, and I'm going to make an argument that's based in something that I don't always agree with, and that's that there's, a parallel between real life and D&D, of course. Like, if you meet somebody on the street and your first impression of them isn't them talking to you, but the way they're acting, they open the door for you, or you guys go to pull into the same parking spot and they let you have it, or something like that. Like, if you run into them 5 minutes later in the bread aisle, like, you're going to be more predisposed to.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You mean, like somebody pretending to be a drunken idiot versus someone who is slightly buzzed and has a hand in their bag and trying to talk to a baron.
Yeah. I mean, I got the information. Not all of it. Enough. But that's part of that role playing, right? You want to role play it. You want to give. I think there's a lot of different stats. That like, and I'm gonna say mostly like intelligence and charisma, that you can really intelligence. Like, you don't have to be a smart person to play a high intelligence character. You know what I mean? But charisma is one of those things where you can be a shit charisma score and still make it work if you play it right. You know, like a boulder's always going to weigh the same amount. So your strength is always going to do strength, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now there's ways around it, obviously, like, oh, I'm going to make a lever, whatever, or I'm going to, you know, but it's the same thing with charisma, but I think more so with charisma, because if you're a gnome with a high charisma and you come in and try to intimidate a Goliath, it's going to be a little hard unless you explain what you're doing. You know what I mean? Like, which that makes it hard too as a charisma character, because there's not very many stats that you're like, oh, well, you know, intelligence, I want to recall something. Okay, this is how you recall it. I want to intimidate somebody. Okay, how do you intimidate them?
That's the worst way to play the game.
Yeah.
I don't know how else to say it. Is to say, oh, I want to intimidate somebody. And for me as a DM, like, there's a I guess it's technically a what's it called, a variant rule or whatever, you know, swapping different ability scores to go with different skills. One of the easiest examples people use is using strength as an intimidation. Strength as the intimidation ability that goes with the intimidation skill rather than charisma. I think we can all imagine that somebody slams their fist down on the table and the cups go. You know, that's not that person didn't just do something charismatic. They did something that was strength.
Yeah, no, and I think that's a perfectly fine variant. You know what I mean?
Right. But my point is, I am far more apt to give the player what they want if they are going to play, like,
role play it. Yep.
Exactly.
And that's the thing too, right? So I kind of do that, but instead of, so that example that you just gave is a perfect example. Instead of saying, okay, use strength for intimidation, what I would do as a DM is go, okay, do me a favor, roll a strength check. Okay, so you roll a good strength check and you slam your fists on the table. Wood shards come up as your fist goes through the table. That DC for that intimidation just went.
Yeah, I can understand what you're getting at. You know, that drops your DC.
Yeah.
But I feel at a certain point, like, dropping the DC or increasing the bonus that goes along with it, it's two ways to arrive at the same conclusion.
Yeah. That's what I was saying. I'm sorry. Yeah, that's what I was saying. Like, it's all about the role play, and it's all about the story that's being told at the time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, you can't on the other end of that. I don't care how charismatic you are, you're not going to lift that boulder by giving it a kiss. You know what I mean? Like, But an intelligent player may go, okay, I'm gonna use rope, and I see something up above me that I can make like a pulley. I'm gonna spend a little time, and I'm gonna tie the rope around it. I'm gonna sling it up over, and I'm gonna pull it up.
Yeah, absolutely. You guys have no idea how many tools were in Artemis's bag because we never got there. I think I like all the money that we had because we started at 5th level. Brandon used the rules to start at different levels for how much money that you had accumulated up at that point. And I rolled like max on that roll or something. So I had like a chunk of change going into it. Bought a breastplate, that was a huge portion of it. Everything else was battering ram, pulleys,
Yep.
rope, ball bearings, crowbars, like 4 different toolkits because he was a gnome artificer. He had, if I remember correctly, he had like lockpick proficiency, smithing tools, woodworking tools,
Yep.
and tinkerer's tools, I think it was. So like he had a whole freaking bag of holding full of fucking tools. We never got to use most of them, but
Yeah.
you know, that's I get what you're saying.
Yeah, and that's I mean that your ability to role play will affect your roles. If your DM, I'm going to say that's DM dependent because that's my personal opinion, that's how it should be played.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So I mean, ability checks are important. Ability scores again are important, but just as important is the ability to articulate what you're trying to say to get the same job done, and it may change things. So yeah, to me anyway. So I think I mean I don't have much to go off of ability checks. What does it say in the book? In brief.
For ability checks?
Yeah. Did we already read that?
No.
Okay.
It just says your role-playing efforts can alter an NPC's attitude, but there might still be an element of chance in the situation. For example, your DM can call for a charisma check at any point during an interaction if he or she wants the dice to play a role in determining an NPC's reaction. Pay attention to your skill proficiencies when thinking of how you want to interact with an NPC, and stack the deck in your favor by using an approach that relies on your best bonuses and skills. If a group needs to trick a guard into letting them into a castle, the rogue who is proficient in deception is the best bet to lead the discussion. When negotiating for a hostage's release, a cleric with persuasion should do the most talking.
Yeah, and I agree. You know, I agree. It you know, you that being said, right? So back to what I was saying about the stone. Your player with the higher intelligence may think of the pulley system, but who do you want on the other end of the rope?
Oh, you still want the Goliath Barbarian.
Right. You're still going to want that Goliath Barbarian. And I like what it said. The thing that bothered me was that it was only a little sentence at the beginning of that snidbit. Josh, when it talks about role playing and how it plays into ability checks. It's right at it's like right towards the beginning. I think it was like the 3rd sentence in.
Let's see. Efforts can affect or alter their attitude. Might still be a chance or element of chance.
Right.
Chris.
So it's
That
saying,
one.
yeah. So it's saying about affecting the attitude. What I get from that though is affect the outcome. So role playing will affect the outcome, but if you want to add an element of chance, I can also do those die rolls. But
I, I
go ahead.
see. I read that a little bit differently. To me, what they're saying is the same thing that you were saying about altering DCs.
Yeah, yeah,
Because you know what I mean. To me, that's what you're doing is you're kind of softening the NPC. Um, that's what lowering the DC
yep. And that's
looks like.
I think they should have in I think they should have emphasized that a little bit more instead of having it in that
Okay, yeah.
one that's what I was trying to get at. So
Oh, okay.
out of that whole thing, it says it for the most part. It says it, but it doesn't really say it.
Well, and it's one of those. It's it's one of those things where it feels like 5e they wanted to get into a more intuitive way to do things.
Mm-hmm.
Because I feel like in previous editions, what this would have looked like was there'd be a table that said, if an NPC is hostile, any social interaction with them is going to come with a +5 DC. Neutral NPC is going to have a +0 DC, and a friendly NPC is going to have a -5 DC.
Yeah,
And like
they tried to make
things
it a
like
little bit more fluid.
that, and like I feel like in previous editions there would have been just like a table here that like explained like how to set DCs, and they wanted to get away from that. So like I can understand kind of both. I can understand why you're not thrilled with how it's presented.
Yeah.
I can also understand why there's not more extrapolation.
Well, I believe there is a little bit in the um, DM guide, a little
There
bit.
may be. There's like the DM guide and Xanathars are excellent resources, and I do pick out Xanathars among the other source books because to me that's the crown jewel of the.
Yeah, the only three books that you need is the handbook, Xanathars. I would even say, honestly, I would rather have Xanathar's guide than the DM guide. The Xanathar's guide to everything fixed 5e.
I would agree with that. The DMG, in my opinion, what the DMG was more of if the PHB is the concept drawings of a car that's coming out, let's say.
Yeah.
The DMG is the blueprints.
Yeah.
So it's useful, but like it'll have several paragraphs on certain very minute details that can be important. But
yeah, I think that's the thing, right? Between those three books, they have the answers to the questions. They may be in all three books, but they have the answers. So like the DMG, if you haven't read the DMG yet, it's if you really look at it, most of that stuff is world building and campaign building and ideas for that. So your handbook is really your rule book. Your DMG is basically this is how you're gonna, and it's not even really how to run the game. It's more so because that's in your rule book. Your DMG, it does have a lot of really good tools in it to use for a DM, but for the most part, you already have most of what you need. 90% of what you need is in the handbook. And then the other 9% is in Xanathar's guide because it's better than how it teaches it in the DMG.
Well, and to be fair, there's always, I'm gonna guess that the DMG and the PHP came out at the same time when 5e first launched. I was not around for that, but Xanathars has the advantage of being released later
Yeah.
and getting the developers, the publishers, however you want to put it, seeing what people get tripped up on and what they need to. Hey, we need to explain this mechanic better because it doesn't. People are having issues with it.
I think
Or
that's the one thing that 5th edition did a really good job at versus the other editions, because the other editions were like, I published this, that's what it is.
well, and the thing is, I think that this is an advantage of being a little bit more ambiguous about what you want. Like, it's not that they instituted a rule set in the PHB and then had
Right.
to, countermand it later and say, hey, that, they had a couple sentences like what you're talking about in terms of, NPCs' attitudes. They have a couple sentences that are kind of ambiguous and they explained it better later.
Mm-hmm.
It's not something where they spent a whole lot of time, realized that the mechanic that they developed didn't work, and then had to say, hey, except for Rangers. Rangers are terrible. So, of course, they had to go back and fix them. But that's different.
Oh, Xanathar's God fixed everything. They even made a good ranger. Seriously. How can you even question that book?
I mean, I would argue they made two, but
Oh yeah. I forgot about the Gloomstalker and the Horizon Walker.
Horizon Walker, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, Monster Slayer may be good too, but I feel like Monster Slayer was more rangery in terms of like having specializations and being crazy good against those specializations, and then kind of mediocre against everything else. But
Yeah.
we're tangenting again.
Yep. Okay. So I think that covers ability checks pretty well. I think we're good. We're good there. Does anybody, either of you guys, want to add anything to ability checks?
No, not really.
Okay. So next is this is going to be a relatively short one, and then we're going to take a quick break because we're going to talk about resting, long rest, short rest. Josh, go ahead and give me a little read.
Let's see. Heroic though they might be, adventurers can't spend every hour of the day in the thick of exploration, social interaction, and combat. They need to rest. Time to sleep and eat, tend their wounds, refresh their minds and spirits. For spell casting, embrace themselves for further adventures. Unless you're in one of Jesse's games where you don't rest for, 3 weeks. Sorry, it says that.
It's weird that the handbook calls me out so often.
I think somewhere in there it says you're a prick. So
I need to talk to Mr. Perkins. I think there might be some copyright infringement. I'm not gonna lie. A lot of times, sometimes I will not let anybody get a short rest. It depends on the campaign. Like the live roll when they went at the two towers, when Bernard climbed the two towers and then they went underneath to find the masks. I did not want them to rest. So every time that they laid down, another monster popped out. You would think after like the second monster, it'd be like, you know what? I don't think we're allowed to rest here. But nope, we're going to try to rest again. Okay. But that had to do with where they were. Like it specifically, I don't try to not let them get a long or short rest, but there's times where it doesn't make sense. Doesn't make sense to take a short rest in the middle of a battlefield surrounded by zombies. Unless you can with, a tiny hut.
Magic rocks.
But
What did we do that time? We just piled bodies up against the door and then locked the other one with that
To the
magic lock.
Yep,
That's fine.
perfect. You know, um, I'm more during the game. I am more apt to give a short rest than a long rest. But I like I said, I keep tabs on the rests because I don't want them like going into one room, they get fucked up, and then they're like, okay, well we're gonna take a short rest here. But no, you're not. You're in a cavern. There is no door. It's wide open, and shit can get to you.
Yeah, I think it's gotta make sense. I mean, you have to remember that NPCs aren't. This isn't WoW,
Right.
right? This is not. Yeah, and I'm gonna kind of make an assumption that everybody's played WoW. Um, but
Everybody
this
here
isn't
has.
good. This isn't this isn't a situation where you can be in this hallway, and those NPCs over there that are within like, I don't know, 150 feet of you, like, if you were to assume they had any semblance of sentience, and they were like, oh, our buddies are getting their asses kicked over there, maybe we should do something about it. Nah, we're just gonna sit here and that dude's gonna pat back and forth and everything's just gonna stay static. That's not how D&D works. Like,
Right.
I would use like Lord of the Rings. I would use as an example, right? When they're in Moria, they go to take a short rest. Pippin knocks the bug into the thing. They got fucked, right?
Yep. Y'all fucked up
Like
now.
that same thing. That same thing. Not that it should always happen to players, but listen, if to use your example, if you guys are fighting in a room, making all kinds of noise, now it's different. If you're like, listen, we're gonna stealth into this room, the rogue and the ranger are gonna go in and pluck and stabby stab and not make a whole bunch of noise. We're gonna close the door. We're gonna take a short rest.
Yep.
Like, right. But if you're in casting spells and all
I
out battle in a room
I cast
and
Thunder Wave. I need a
and
short
then
rest.
and then just chill in there for like an hour, which is what a short rest is.
Yep.
Like, I feel like that's going to draw some attention.
Mm-hmm.
And either it's going to interrupt your rest, or when you get done with that rest, you're going to open that door and the world is not going to look the same as when you closed it.
Nope. There's gonna be a whole lot of new friendly faces on the other side of that door.
Right.
Yeah. And long rest too. Like normally I save the long rest until they get into a town or a lot of the times to the end of the session. If they're traveling, I'll give them a long rest along the way. Um, but in my games, chances are you're not going to get a long rest until till you reach the end of that day, and even sometimes you don't get that.
You mean how like you guys are in an inn getting ready to rest, and then Thrice decides to go swimming? Yeah, she's probably not getting that long rest while everyone else is napping. Like,
Yeah, and again, it's player dependent, right? Um, if I want to take a long rest, you bet your ass I'm gonna fortify whatever I'm around, or I'm gonna make a camp, and hopefully my buddies will, keep an eye out as everybody else is resting. That being
Yeah,
said,
and I think it's. Sorry, go ahead.
no, I'm just saying. That being said, I don't care how good you are, it's not gonna be in that cemetery with 3,000 zombies around. It's just not gonna happen. I'll even figure out how to break the hut. How does something come out of the ground?
so magic.
I think it is important to note, however, that with regards for a long rest, because I see a lot of people get this kind of confused, mixed up, however you want to put it. It's pretty clearly defined as, you know, sleeping for 6 hours and no more than 2 hours of light activity.
Right.
Give some examples of light activity. It doesn't mean that you're sleeping for 8 hours straight.
Right.
It doesn't mean that each character has to sleep for 8 hours straight.
Right.
Depending on the size of your party and such, you know, if you have 4 characters, let's say each one takes a 2-hour watch and sleeps for 6 hours.
Yep.
That's
sufficient.
right.
Yep.
You know, I it's tough, and it really depends on your DM, right? We dealt with this the very first session I played with you. After we fought those wolves, Becky had gotten some wolf pelts, and she was messing around with, you know, cleaning them or whatever. She wasn't paying attention during her watch.
Yep.
I think at this point, because again, it depends on your DM, and there's also an issue of like, you don't want your players to say, "Oh, we're gonna go into town, buy 10 dogs, and then we don't have to worry about rest because they're just gonna take care of all that shit," right? But like right now, and it's Brandon's game. He can DM it however he wants. He can deal with it however he wants. To me, the dog that's with us would be making a lot of the perception rolls during the rest, especially if the players are, you know, I think we probably all have experience with dogs. Something's sneaking up on you, the dog's gonna be the first one to notice it. I mean, you know.
Oh yeah,
But you know, and if that's, and depending on how your DM rules that kind of thing, that can be a really powerful ally because, you know, like for that, in that example, she got disadvantage on her perception rolls. Well, if the dog's paying attention and you're screwing around or preparing spells or writing a letter or whatever it is that you want to do on a long rest, or if you have 2 characters having a conversation during a long rest, you know, that can help offset that disadvantage or whatever on perception. If you have you know, an NPC that's not dealing with that, specifically an animal NPC, because they tend to have pretty good perceptions.
Yep.
And keen senses and things like that.
Yeah. And I think really with that being said, like with the dog, I honestly think Brandon forgot that the dog was there.
Yeah,
because I did.
It's a tough thing because especially with the way action economy works in 5e, you don't want your players to. It really upsets CR ratings.
Yeah.
Really upsets CR ratings. If you have a bunch of, you know, whether it's animal companions, like I don't let my players even if one of my players has an owlbear as a mount, I typically don't let them fight with. I use very similar rules to what the Battlesmith has. If you want to let your mount take an attack, if you want your animal companion, except for rangers, because rangers are their whole different thing and they have very specific mechanics for how that works. But if you want your animal companion to do something, you have to spend part of your action to get them to do that. Because otherwise, it just really upsets CRs really quick. Makes combat really long for no reason.
The only thing that I will have them do is defend themselves. Like, if something comes up to them and attacks them, chances are they're going to defend themselves. They're not going to just stand there. You know what I mean? But to have them offensively attack.
Correct.
No, you're spending. Yep.
And that's what I mean.
I agree.
Like I said, I liked the way that the Artificer rules were, and I kind of used I used that pretty heavily. But yeah, I do think it's important. Like I said, when you're using perception rolls and things like that, some of those. If I'm sitting at a campfire sharpening my knife and my dog's ears perk up, my ears are gonna perk up. It's just the nature of it, you know. And I don't think that that's that hard to translate into D&D mechanics.
No, I don't think so. But that being said, too, like as a player, right? Depending on the DM, for the most part, like I'm pretty chill.
Hmm.
So if that was me and I was like, okay, we'll make a perception check, and the player said before the roll, let me preface this. Before the roll, hey, I have a dog. Okay, roll with, because a lot of the times we're not, as a DM, I'm not thinking about that dog. I'm not.
Right.
You might be, but what we don't want to see is, okay, I got a 3. Oh, I have a dog.
Right, absolutely.
No, because then I'm gonna roll against it just out of principle. You know what I mean? Like, you rolled shit. I'm not giving you advantage on it because
Right. I mean, I know for me that part of my DM screen was my player's passive stats, because asking what a player's passive, like, to me, the reason passive stats, they started using them other than convenience, is so that you're not running into make a perception roll.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden the players start looking for traps, because now they're like, oh,
yeah,
you know, and you said you throw perception rolls that don't actually mean anything in there, and the guard puts his hand in his pocket.
yeah,
You know,
a lot.
and that's fine, but to me, that's like what perception rolls are for. So that's part of my DM screen, is what each player's passive perception is. So if I need to see it, I don't have to ask them. They don't know what's going on. I can just look at it.
Yeah,
And
and
you know,
a lot of the times as a player, again going back to the passive traits, a lot of the times as a player, I'm calling it out. You know what I mean? Like, we walk into a room and I'm like, I have a passive perception of, well, right now 22. I have a passive perception of 22. Who was here in the last week? You know, like, I'm being facetious with that, but that's what I mean. Like, I think writing down the passive scores for your characters is important, or having a copy of the player's stats is important.
Yeah, you did that. You did that Monday when we were when you were trying to find the ogre girl again. You're like, my passive perception is this. Do I see her?
Yeah.
I said, everyone roll perception.
Yeah.
Yes, you will all see.
Yeah.
Right, and this goes back to something that we talked about before. If you look at the Mastiff stat block, you know, advantage on wisdom perception checks relying on hearing or smell, keen hearing and smell. You know, if the thing that you're rolling your perception against, or that you're playing, you know, the goblin that's trying to sneak up on you, smells and makes sound.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, unless that goblin rolls, you know, over an 18, which they can,
oh, yeah.
right? But that's what that dog's passive perception sitting at, is 18.
Yeah.
So, but that's, you know, that's how I look at that kind of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I get it. And that being said, remember, your DM's dealing with a lot more than the players are.
Absolutely.
So and that's, again, that has to be a discussion that your DM and you have when you start playing. But for the most part, if somebody gives me something, it might be something that I don't even notice. You know what I mean? It might be something that I'm not thinking about, because I'm not thinking about the dog being there. What I am thinking about is those 16 goblins that I have hiding in the trees with shotguns. That's what I'm thinking about. You know, I'm thinking about, how am I going to explain this TPK? Not the puppy. That's just me.
Yeah.
That's, you know, I will forget shit like that.
I got you.
So that being said, we have, the next part is I think we should probably talk about this. So, short rest. During a short rest, the kind of shit that you can do is you can roll for hit points. You have about an hour. You roll hit points based on your hit dice. Certain classes get spell slots back on a short rest. Your character's stats will tell you pretty much what you can get back on a short rest. Warlock gets spell points back or spell slots back, only because they only get 2. Long rest is like a full rest. You're fully charged. If you go without a long rest for too long, you can actually get points of exhaustion, which will give you a negative effect if you don't get a long rest. But obviously you need to sleep, and you need to get like good sleep. So, and I don't know if any of you have ever stayed up for days on end. Does not bode well for the operation of your body or your mind. Is there anything I'm missing on the rest?
You also, when you take a long rest, you actually only gain up to half of your total hit die back.
Yeah.
Yes,
yeah.
I screwed that rule up for a solid year.
Yeah.
I thought you got all your hit die back.
Nope.
Until Izzy said something like a month ago.
Yeah. Nope, you only get half back. So it makes it... I like that addition to 5e, because I'm pretty sure 3.5 you got all your hit dice back. I like that addition. That way it stops people from really going, I'm going to take a short rest. I'm going to take a short rest. I'm going to take a short rest. Right? You got to think about your hit dice a little bit more than just continuing to rest and use them up. Yeah.
So, question we never actually got answered.
Okay.
Because Becky never actually really fought until we took another long rest.
Okay.
Being turned to stone, do you actually get any benefits of long rest or not?
I would say it depends on the DM.
Do you remember what the condition was?
I believe the condition was petrified.
Okay.
So,
we can definitely look.
Yeah.
I don't know that.
I don't think it says anything about that.
Yeah, some of the spells will tell you, okay, you don't get, this doesn't count as, a rest, or, yeah. I don't think it does.
Well, okay, so my argument would be that I'm not actually doing anything.
Right. And I think that's how I gauged it. You're not really doing anything, and it depends on how you visualize being turned to stone, right? Are you resting because it pretty much puts you to sleep, or are you in a crazy dark way you're forced to stay awake? And
well, it does say the creature is incapacitated, can't move or speak, and is unaware of its surroundings.
Yeah, so I would say because of that, I would say it would grant a rest.
Though, to be fair, with Dewdrop, she was like that when she wasn't petrified.
This is true.
So,
see, I would. This is probably off. This is off book. I could see bringing somebody out of petrified, depending on how long they've been petrified.
Mm-hmm.
Bringing them out with a level of exhaustion.
I could see that.
Or if you wanted to say, we're gonna use the exhaustion rules, but instead of a day, you have to go a month or something like that. So if you're
Yeah,
petrified for a month, come out with 1 level. If you're petrified for a full 6 months, you die.
yeah. I
I,
would be
I
okay with that.
and my reference would be Han Solo Carbonite. Uh, you know,
Fair enough.
that's that's
Yeah.
that's almost how I would visualize it. I have a hard time imagining somebody being petrified and then coming out and then just being like good to go.
Yeah.
Like
Like,
I feel like there would
oh,
I
that
feel like
was
there would be a
nice.
disorientation to it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that too, like you said, it would depend on the time frame that it would happen.
Right.
You
And
know what I mean?
even if you wanted to say they can't die from it, but if it's too long, they will come out with 5 levels. I think 5 levels is you can't move. So to say, and I wouldn't say they can't literally move. I would just say that maybe they can't go anywhere for the first day. Like they're not
Oh
fit to
yeah,
travel.
I would think
You
that
know.
even being petrified, like, and again, it's going to be up to the DM, I think, with that.
Absolutely.
But like, if I'm petrified, right? And let's say it is just like I go into like a catatonic sleep or whatever, and I'm rested. There's still a level of atrophy.
Mhm.
Like there's still going to be a level of
Excuse me, there is a message for
um,
you.
getting my shit together after I
Well,
wake up.
yeah, and depending on how you wanted to execute that, I think that the exhaustion levels um, do a really good job actually at explaining mechanically what that character is going through.
Yeah, yeah.
You know.
And I also think, if you're under for like a couple of minutes or an hour, like you might be disoriented for like a couple of minutes. But I mean, it depends on the DM, you know what I mean?
Hmm.
Um, yeah.
Yeah, it depends. It also depends on uh, like what are you trying to achieve with the petrification?
Right.
Like if you're not really trying to achieve anything, then does it really matter? Probably not. Is this something where the rest of your players are now going on a quest to find the what the fuck is it even the some kind of feather that undoes petrification? Um, and the longer that player's petrified, like the worse off they're going to be when they get out.
Yep.
And that can be a story element. That can be something that becomes relevant to how your story unfolds.
And it depends on who you're petrifying, right? So
See,
like
yeah,
I might allow like an NPC a little bit of a different outcome from being petrified than, an adventurer. Because you have to remember, your adventurers, your basic skill stats, 10 is still above average for
I
most
thought
people.
10 was average.
8 to 10 is
Okay,
about average for a normal person.
right.
So even, and very few of your skills are going to be, I mean, unless you rolled like Izzy. But um you're kind of a, lack of a better term, you're kind of a superhuman,
Hmm.
right? If your abilities are as high as, so you're gonna be able to take more shit than, the bar wench.
I don't know. This boy went just take a lot of
Well,
shit.
yeah, they take, that's something totally different,
Oh,
Super
okay.
constitution though. Um,
Right, right.
super high constitution, especially on the weekends. Um,
yeah. I tried to test that against Shadowbrook.
yeah. So yeah, that's gonna depend on your DM and how he wants to play it and what the outcome, like Anthony's saying, what the outcome's gonna be, right? What do I want to come of this petrification?
Well, that was like the whole point of Dewdrops was like, oh well, we have this necklace. We just need to use it to break the curse. And then Torrent's like, huh? Did she get rested? Let's find out. Yank, take it with
Yeah.
me.
But all right, let's take a quick break because it is 10 o'clock and like the next half hour is pretty much gonna be the last part.
Okay.
Yeah, this is gonna be a tangent of mine.
Between adventures.
Yeah.
All right.
So let's take a quick break. we're back. Now I'm even more hungry. So the last part we're going to talk about is Between Adventures. We'll touch lightly on the lifestyle expense because, like, I get it. I don't think that it plays a huge role unless that's something that you want to add into your campaign. You know, if you want to buy houses or, you know, you're lavish. But for the most part, you're an adventure group. I mean, most of the games that I've played, it isn't, you know, they're not worried about lavish things. They're worried about feeding their gullet and killing shit and adventuring. So, but Josh, go ahead and give us a little tidbit on the lifestyle expense.
It says between adventures, you choose a particular quality of life and pay the cost of maintaining that lifestyle as described in Chapter 5. Living a particular lifestyle doesn't have a huge effect on your character, but your lifestyle can affect the way other individuals and groups react to you.
Yep. Which is true. But again, for me anyway, most of the groups that I play with were dirty adventurers. You know, we'll stay at an inn. Every once in a while, we'll toss a little extra coin to stay somewhere nice, or get the extra, you know, meat stick. But I don't see too much RP as far as I'm gonna live like a noble, or I'm gonna, you know, you might. It's just not something that I've come across with my players. I don't know. You guys are more than welcome to add anything you want there.
I mean, I agree.
I would have to finish a campaign to know how
to
act between campaigns.
This is true. This is true.
I mean, I have some ideas about how I would go about it, but I haven't been able to put anything into practice, so it's really tough for me to speak at all intelligently about it.
Yeah. Especially, you know, most of our campaigns haven't lasted very many levels. I would assume that once you get up in level and, you know, you have the money, or you really want to play into that noble background, but for the most part, I mean, that part in almost every character that I play is, I mean, their lifestyle is kind of a military grunt. You know, I'm gonna eat what I need to eat and survive. But that's it. Like I said, every once in a while I'm gonna have a good meal. It's just like real life, you know what I mean? Like for me, but then again, I've never been rich, so I don't know what I don't know what that caviar lifestyle is. So, you know, for me again, and it even says it in the handbook, it really doesn't affect too much. I mean, it could, just like everything else, it can affect the players. If you have that noble background and you're used to living at a certain standard, or an NPC that you have to escort to another town, might expect certain things because of their nobility.
That is kind of like one of the new Wizards, the D&D games with Nate and all of them, that the second episode aired on Tuesday. Two of the characters are nobles. Like that's what they are. So people treat them completely different than the other two characters, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And that being said too, your PCs have to play that up. Like they're gonna have to RP that. You know what I mean? If
Yeah.
I'm used to eating caviar every day and I want to be dressed in the finest linens, or I walk into an inn and this is atrocious. I'm not sleeping here. You got to pay that price. But for the most part, you're a level 1 character with 10 gold. You can't afford a mansion. Um, so, like I said, you can role play it. You can do whatever. That's a great thing. You can do whatever the hell you want. Just like everything else, though, know that there's consequences. But again, I have yet to come across this as a DM or a player. So, well, I think enough said on that. Unless you guys have anything to add.
Nope, not on this one.
Okay. Now it's time for a tangent.
All right, that's our episode. Everyone have a good night.
Next part is downtime activities. Go ahead, Josh. Give me a little read.
All right. Between adventures, the DM might ask what your character is doing during his or her downtime. Periods of downtime can vary in duration, but each downtime activity requires a certain number of days to complete before you gain any benefits, and at least 8 hours of each day must be spent on the downtime activity for the day to count. The days do not need to be consecutive. If you have more than one, or if you have more than the minimum amount of days to spend, you can keep doing the same thing for a longer period of time or switch to a new downtime activity. Downtime activities other than the ones presented below are possible if you want your character to spend his or her downtime performing an activity not covered here. Discuss it with your DM.
These activities would include things like tinkering. These things would be like alchemy, herbalism, making poisons, making weapons, scrolls, brewing. This is one thing that I will absolutely, positively use the Unearthed Arcana stuff or homebrewed stuff, because I think this is one thing that D&D has dropped the ball on, in my personal opinion.
What do you feel is the most egregious?
It costs just as much, if not more, for me as an alchemist or a herbalist to make a healing potion. Actually more, because I have to spend more time to actually create it. And the same amount of money that it would cost me to walk in and buy it. That
Where is that articulated?
Josh, what chapter is that on?
I don't know. I have 2 minutes to look.
It may be the DMG.
Like I know that it gets covered elsewhere between, because like this is pretty vague.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you're right. It's the other one. It's the dungeon.
I mean, this you're, and I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just practicing a profession. You can work between adventures, allowing you to maintain a modest lifestyle without having to pay 1 GP per day. See Chapter 5 for more information on lifestyle expenses. This benefit lasts as long as you continue to practice your profession. If you're a member of an organization that provides gainful employment, such as a Temple or Thieves Guild, you earn enough to support a comfortable lifestyle instead. If you have a proficiency performance skill, but the performance skill to use during the daytime, you earn enough to support a wealthy lifestyle. That's it for practicing a profession.
Yeah.
In terms of the PHP.
So
yeah, as a profession, like, my main thing is, like, I'm going to throw in a little video game here. Skyrim.
Oh, stop.
I have to, right?
Okay, go for it. I might disagree with where you're going with it, but go for it.
The way that Skyrim does it is unrealistic.
Okay, that's all I want.
It is unrealistic. But here's the thing.
I will exploit the shit out of blacksmithing all day.
Oh yeah.
100 leather helmets, get 5 levels, somehow know how to swing a sword better. I'm down.
Yeah,
right?
No, but let's be realistic about something, right?
Okay.
If I smith 100 daggers, it's gonna take time. I get that.
Yes.
It's gonna cost money. I get that. But every time I make a dagger, every time I make a sword, every time I make a potion, I'm going to get better at it.
Hopefully, unless you're really bad.
Correct. Yeah. I would agree with that. I would say that I would say that 5e doesn't really.
No, it doesn't. It
work that way.
Right. But the other thing is too, right? So if I'm an alchemist, not only should I know what things that I have to put together, what components that I need, but also where to find them. Or let's say that I don't, right? And I'm an herbalist. I know where to find shit. And if I find it in one location, it should be easier for me to find it in the next time. Because I know where it grows. But it doesn't... there's a lot to be said about downtime activities. Because most of my characters will use downtime activities because that's what I enjoy doing, right?
How much just to how much does a healing potion cost?
Normal healing potion, 50 gold.
50.
Yeah.
So according to Xanathar's, because Xanathar's has downtime revisited.
Yeah.
Is that the rule set that you use?
I take from that.
Because you said UA, and I don't know what the UA stuff is because I don't really pay attention to UA.
Right, and that's what I'm saying. Because normally I hate Unearthed Arcana or homebrewed stuff from other people. Like I won't from other people. I will not use it in my campaigns.
Right, and I'm looking at they have a specific rule set for potions healing.
Mm-hmm.
It seems pretty reasonable to me. It takes a day and 25 gold.
Yeah. So that being said, right? 25 gold. Even that. So I want to dive into this, right?
Okay.
So, to me, personally, if I am an alchemist and I know that I have to collect things to make my potions.
Yes.
Me personally, I would start to think about how to collect them, which would bring me into herbalism, right? So now if I'm proficient with herbalism, and I am proficient with alchemy, even that 25 gold shouldn't exist. It may take me more time because now I have to go out and I have to find the things, I have to collect the ingredients, the herbs. Then I have to bring them back. I have to prepare them. I gotta, right?
Right.
That 25 gold shouldn't exist
Okay,
if
so
I
the
have
way
the components.
correct. The way I'm reading this is it doesn't say 25 gold plus components. The way I'm
Right.
kind of looking at it, the way and if I read it specifically, I might, come to a different conclusion. But I'm looking at it saying if you're in town, you can now. The time's ridiculous. Okay.
Yeah.
And there's a lot to that, and I'll kind of circle back to that. To me, what it's saying is that you're taking 25 gold worth of components.
Yep.
And
That's
like,
what it's saying.
and to go back to your Skyrim, you can go find iron veins and hunt elk to get leather, and pick mushrooms and all this shit, or you can just go to the blacksmith and buy ingots.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
Or
Like
steal
or steal them, yeah, because that's what we all do when we get to Whiterun, right? Or not Whiterun, but whatever that first fucking town is that they have, 10 steel ingots under the blacksmith that nobody can see at night.
Oh yeah, river.
Yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead.
But that's how I'm seeing it. Is it's 25 gold worth of components.
Riverwood.
That's
Thank you.
Riverwood, yeah. That's how I'm seeing it, and you're correct. If you're saying if while we're out adventuring, you say, hey, while the problem is, and I think this is realistic, is if you're on a cart path and you're like, I want to look for components to make healing potions, that DC along that cart path is going to be high.
Yep.
Because it's high traffic and a lot of people see it, and a lot of people now, if you guys go to take your long rest, you go 100 or 200 meters off the road, and you're like, before the sun goes down, I have 2 hours during my long rest that I don't, especially if I'm an elf or whatever, I have 2 hours. One of those hours I want to spend doing a sweep to look for some stuff. DC is going to be lower then because it's lower traffic.
Yeah.
But
even with that said, right? So if you look at even making potions, there's a certain DC for every potion that you make. So what I'm saying is, if I make healing potions, let's say we're gonna forego the material thing. I have the materials. I spent the time and I went out in the woods for like 16 fucking days and where I fucking bought a house and now my garden's filled with the herbs that I know that I need to make a healing potion. Every time I make that healing potion, it should become easier for me to make it. To a certain extent.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. And that to me would be an adjustment of the DC. Maybe depending on how you want to do it, and this has a lot to do with what type of campaign you're running. I mean, is this something where somebody's going to be making potions all the time? I mean, then maybe you want to do a behind the screen roll of each time you make a potion, you roll a D10, and if it's a 10, that DC drops 1. Or
and that's the thing too. Like I've seen a lot of like homebrewed stuff or guildmaster stuff for how these. I have yet to see one that I'm perfectly happy with, and I don't think I'll ever get it because I think it would be too. It would literally be, talk with the DM and figure out how you want to do it.
Right, and that's the problem is like
it's almost
to be perfectly happy with the system, it's gonna be a 3-page fucking thing describing
it's gonna be a
how
game
the
in
DC
itself.
gets.
Yeah.
Right, because like because to me, like, you know, we're using potion making as an example, but it kind of extrapolates to everything else.
Hmm.
You know, uh, you know, maybe to improve, there's an improvement DC,
Yeah.
and the more you improve, the higher that DC goes, but you get to add your int modifier to your roll against that DC because smart people learn faster than dumb people.
Yeah.
You know, like we can go into the weeds like that, but at the end of the day, does it really fucking matter?
For me, it does, and this is why.
Yeah,
This
apparently.
is only because that's the kind of shit that I like to do.
Right, I get that.
Like
And
where
like
where everybody else is like, okay, I'm an adventurer. I'm gonna buy health potions and I'm gonna do, like, to me, almost the downtime activities of the crafting
Mhm.
is just as much fun to me as swinging my sword or casting my spell.
I can appreciate what you're saying. I mean, it's I can appreciate what you're saying. To make a system that is accurate to what you're talking about is, I'm not trying to exaggerate, but we're talking several pages worth of content
I have
to
a
explain.
I have a small book, and
I
that's
believe
just
you.
on potion.
Yeah, I believe you. I believe you. And to me, you know, the time thing is a little bit ridiculous.
Yeah.
I would definitely change the way that works. I would allow the player to do it in quantity. You know, instead of making a potion of something, try to make a gallon of something.
Yeah.
But for anybody who's tried cooking for 8 or 10 people, like just because you know how to make a meal for 2 or 3 people, try to make that same meal for 8 or 10 people. It's a lot different,
Yeah. It's
you
taking.
know.
Yep. Yeah,
So
I agree.
if you want to do it in bulk, great. You're going to be able to get more done in a day, but the DC is going to go up,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And also, um, if you do, you know, if you're trying to cook those 10 fillets and you burn them, you that's not good. You're risking all those materials,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And like what I'm saying is like, yeah, you could get into a really detailed system about what you're talking about. I absolutely agree. Like even what Xanathars goes into. Xanathars is very procedural in terms of, and I've
Mm-hmm.
done a little bit of Xanathars. You know, my one DM one time, we had kind of finished the first chapter of an adventure. He's like, "You guys are gonna hang out for about a week," and I'm like, "Oh, can we do downtime?" And he was not terribly familiar with it. I'm like, "I want to do pit fighting," and like they're on the fly, we're like trying to figure out pit fighting,
Yeah.
and I, you know, want some money and whatnot, but I can understand what you're saying, and you know, if the DM wants to, yeah, I don't think it would be terribly difficult to build that in as
No.
a thing to say, you know. And I remember particularly a game where we did do that because I had a mount that I wanted to make barding for,
Mm-hmm.
but I was poor, so I'm like, everywhere we went, I'm like, I'm looking for scrap metal because when we get done with this adventure, I want to go home and try to make barding. So like I need scrap metal. So like you know, while we're looking around, I'm looking for any type of metal object that, you know, if it's broken, that's fine. If you want to give me a bundle of short swords, that's fine. And I literally had a, a, a thing in my inventory where when I would say that, we would roll, and you know, depending on what that roll came out to, what he said was, when you get to 100%, you're going to have enough metal to make the thing you want to make.
Yep. Yeah.
Each time you say, each time we're in a place and you're looking for stuff, you're going to make a roll, depending on where it is and all that kind of stuff. That roll is going to determine how many more percent you go up.
Yeah, and
You know,
That's kind of what I did with my herbalism and my alchemy in the draft that I'm writing right now. It's a percentage, um,
Right.
and things can change the percentage, right? So, for instance, if I've never made a certain potion, so let's say like I don't know, a potion of underwater breathing.
Hmm.
If I've never made it before, but I want to try to make it, the DC is going to be ridiculously high. Unless I have a recipe,
Right.
somebody taught it to me. That's pretty much it. You know what I mean? And then the DC will drop.
Right.
And then, so for components though, okay, so I know what I need, right? Because I have the recipe. Somebody showed me how to make this. I already know what I need. I can go to the store and buy it for that cost. Like Xanathar's, we're going with 25. I
Yeah.
can
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
can I can go to the store and I can buy that, or I can go out and harvest what I need if I'm in the right area. I can go harvest what I need. I'm taking a DC check to harvest. I'm then I'm doing a DC check to identify. I'm doing a DC check to harvest. Then I'm doing a DC check to prepare. Then I'm doing a DC check to cook. It's a lot of DC checks, but if it's your downtime activity, and it's like you said, hey, I'm gonna be gone for like we're gonna pick back up in a week.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, that's fine. How much time do I need to spend doing this? And this is what I want to do. You talk to the DM, and then you make a couple of rolls, and okay, this is what you got out of it. Or you horribly destroyed your potions and burnt down your house.
Well, that's like for when we were talking about making your gun the other night.
Mm-hmm.
Like same concept.
Yep.
But like one of the things that I'm implementing is because we talked about this, Jesse, is making potions as well.
Mm-hmm.
So it's also not only is it, yeah, you make these rolls, but depending on how you roll, yeah, you might have made a potion of water breathing, but it might last for like 15 minutes instead
Mm-hmm.
of an hour.
Yeah.
Or that I have like literally unfinished potions, like the one Trepta found.
Mm-hmm.
So it only lasts for half the time.
Yeah.
Well, and another interesting wrinkle I think that you might be able to look at is specifically I would say that if you're buying ingredients, the herbalists that you're buying them from have standards.
Yeah.
That's how I would look at it. But if you're gathering your raw materials, like anybody who's gardened, I would say, grow jalapenos, see how that goes. You,
Yeah.
you know, um, part of that herbalism skill might be,
Identifying the good ingredients.
well, yeah, not just the good ingredients, but understanding what the quality is. Like,
Mm-hmm.
maybe you get back to your hut and you start cutting up the blister wort or whatever, and you realize that it's a little bit on the weak side.
Mm-hmm.
So you're going to need to add 20% more than you thought than the recipe calls for because and this is you can do this all day long.
Yeah.
And I don't even really think that it's that hard of a concept to understand for anybody who's cooked or done anything like this. Like, this is part of the proficiency, the expertise of these skills. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, a cooking skill, like understanding your ingredients, is part of being able to cook.
And I think a variance in time too, right? So what I mean by that is you're gonna come over and you're gonna cook my family dinner.
hmm
Um, you have an hour to do everything. You have an hour.
Right.
Is that gonna come out as good as if I said, hey, we're eating at 5. You're allowed to come over whenever you want and prepare and start cooking.
Yeah, I mean, right, and I think that the time stuff is a little bit. I think that the time stuff is really subjective. I mean, I have a really hard time saying it's going to take you a day to make a potion.
Yeah.
That's to me that's a stretch. I don't.
I could understand like more advanced potions taking that long. But a simple healing potion versus a superior healing potion. Superior healing potion, you're going to need more materials. It takes a little longer because it's a little bit more fickle because it's a superior healing potion. And not only that, like the one that I'm working on, not only does it take more materials, it takes a little longer to brew, to cook, but it also, because of its magical properties, it actually also costs spell slots.
Yeah, and I would say with the greater healing potion, I would say that one of the complications is the concentration because, and this would be, to me, this would be part of why it's difficult to make is you're concentrating it, but you can't concentrate it. You can't concentrate it to the point that it. You have to be able to increase the intensity of it with it still being stable in terms of what the human body can actually handle.
Yep.
Um, I would say similar to. Well, I don't even have a good comparison for that, to be
It's
honest.
like Ritalin.
Sure, I don't know anything about that.
Let's go with Ritalin. So it's a chemical compound that you put together, and if you have too low of a prescription, doesn't do anything. If you have too high of a prescription, your heart could explode. You just got to get it just right.
Right.
Got to get it just right. Because if you're really thinking about it, like healing potions in general, they're medicine. They're medicine. So you got to make sure that it's just right so that it does what you want it to do. And like Josh said, if you don't have the better materials or if it's an unfinished potion, it may do what you want it to do, but it might not actually do what you want it to do. Like it might not last an hour. That Ritalin might kick that 50 milligrams of Ritalin. I'm making up numbers here. It might hit you and you're like, oh man, this is awesome for like an hour. And then you're like, well, that's done. And then like you could take 250 and be like, this is perfect all day. I'm good all day. You take 500 and you can't sleep and you're chewing your nails and all you want to do is put your head through a plate glass window.
Yeah, and I think that there's two extremes here. What I'm going to consider extremes. And to make video game comparisons, there's WoW and Skyrim. And what I mean by that is in WoW, you go out, collect your materials, you make this exact thing.
Yeah.
With those materials. Now, if you want to get into, you can specialize, and I don't even know where they're at anymore because I haven't played WoW in a couple years. But like, you can specialize in flasks, and you might proc something that makes more than one, or something like that, versus the Skyrim system, where
I made 3,000 daggers. Now I can make Daedra armor.
Well, not even so much that, but like specific to like alchemy, you have different strengths of potions where your skill goes up, so now instead of increasing your carry weight by 52, now it increases it by 53, and now it increases it by 54. And there's all these not just your skill level, but there's all these perks that play into how your potions turn out. And there's like a whole slew of like there's a whole skill tree devoted to alchemy.
Yeah.
And You know what I mean? Like there's two extremes here, and it really depends on, it really depends on. I hate to say it, but it really depends on how much time you have.
Hmm.
I mean, that's the problem, and this comes back to the conversation that we had kind of last week, in terms of like, you may enjoy this. You
Yeah.
obviously enjoy this,
Yeah.
right? But like, how do you, you know,
Yeah.
how do you
Yeah.
manage it? I mean, you don't want to sit there and do a whole session where you're just going back and forth with the DM on how to do alchemy,
Yeah. No, no.
right?
And
Um,
I think that's part of it, right? So like with where we're at on the Sunday game, right?
yeah.
There's not a whole lot that I'm going to be able to do. Number one,
Well,
we
and
play every 2 weeks.
yeah,
Number two, things aren't really available to us. Versus Josh's game, where we still play every 2 weeks, but I'm in a city where I have things available to me. I might say to Josh, listen, we're going to do this. And I'll talk to the group and be like, hey, I need 2 days to make my gun. We're doing it offline. You know what I mean? Like, it, just know that when we come back, 2 days are going to go by.
right. And the other thing that I've found useful from a, and you got to be careful with it, because depending on how crazy you get with it, it really affects how well it works. But like, one of the things that I've kind of experimented with is, specifically if like a group takes a long rest in the middle of a session, and a player comes to me and says, hey, I want to be able to do this, I'll say, that's cool. What we're going to do is sometime during the week, me and you are going to get together one-on-one, and we are going to articulate, like you're saying, like, and I'm just going to keep coming back to the example. Say you come to me and you say, hey, I want to go look for herbs. I'm going to say to you probably, all right, cool. I'm going to get with you one-on-one on Tuesday, and like, we're going to see what happens during this next hour. So you're going to play past that point, and then we're going to come back to it and kind of fill in the blanks.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's not a perfect solution, but I don't.
Well, that's similar to what I did to Bernard
Right,
with his hammer. You know,
right.
okay, well, you got the stone, but it's going to take time for you to work on it. This is how much time you have to work on it. And then, he would rest and he would be like, I'm going to work on this for like an hour. Okay, that's one out of, 30 hours
Hmm.
that you need to craft just the stone. And then
Hmm.
after we hit that point, then we'll kind of go with, how you're going to put everything together. And that's kind of what I was talking to Josh about last night, because my character Darius, he I just got I just took what a third level, so I get 3 skills that I can become proficient in, and one of
Hmm.
those was the Tinker's set, so Tinker's
Okay.
tool, because I want to make my own guns. So part of that is I'm gonna spend an entire night doing nothing but drafting that gun, making sure that it works. I'm gonna draft. I'm gonna draft. I'm gonna draw it out. Now it's gonna take me days to make, but I'm also gonna need to get the materials. I'm gonna have to do this. I'm gonna have to do that. It's gonna take a few days to build a gun, especially for my first time.
Yeah, and guns are something that's really, I've seen threads about gun usage in, not political, just people that want their fantasy setting not to have guns.
Yeah,
And
and I
that's fine. Like, that's like, I
yeah
get it. I mean, I remember playing Final Fantasy Tactics. It's a pretty, Dark Ages, and somebody rolls in with a gun. It kind of, I don't like it. I
yeah
get it. Um, but it makes it complicated when, it makes it complicated when and I'm just gonna use the gunslinger because the gunslinger actually has some stuff that goes along with gun making,
Mm-hmm.
but it makes it tough because, if you're using raw gunslinger, okay, I'll look it up real quick, but I'm pretty sure it says you know how to make a gun.
Yeah.
And at that point, I think it's tough as a DM to start now your example is different, and I'm not trying to make a direct example to what you're talking about, but in that case, it's tough to put that behind skill checks because it says, where's that at?
I'm almost positive that we used either Unearthed Arcana or we used the Guildmaster information for that.
For what?
For the gunsmithing.
It was Matt Mercer's.
Oh, was it?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, it was Matt Mercer's mixed with a little Unearthed, and then we kind of filled in some
Filled in the
blanks.
blanks.
Which I'm creating like a whole spreadsheet of like different types of ammo to use. That you can making stuff. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's tricky though because it's yeah, I can understand where your frustration is with 5e. I think that I don't think it's a hard thing to implement as a DM. It might not live up to your expectations of how it's gonna be, but
yeah, I mean it's easy to implement something, but this is really what irritates me about it. If there were better descriptive rules, people would use it more.
And
that's
I agree. Yeah.
That's the only thing. That's my only thing. There's a lot of tool sets. Like you get an herbalism kit. 90% of the people that get an herbalism kit are never going to use it.
Right, and I think that there's a lot of reasons for that, though. I don't think it's simply because it's not described very well. I think that, I don't like how to put it. It's just a tough thing. It's just a tough thing because you have 4 or 5 players, 6 player, 5 or 6 if you want to count the DM, sitting there, and like, how many times do you want to go? Oh, I'm looking for plans.
Yeah.
Like I have a hard time doing that.
I get it.
I'm not. You play at a table with me. It's not that I'm never going to do something that's solely focused on my character. The only time I'm going to do it is if I feel like it's significant,
if there's time.
Important.
Yeah. But that's my thing. Like, okay, perfect example again, Azmac. Every time that we got to a new location or we were getting ready to rest, before shit hit the fan, before we were gonna start adventuring, hey, just real quick, I'm gonna browse. I'm gonna look around to see if I find anything. Mm-hmm. It's real quick, and for certain things that's perfectly fine. Now to sit down and go, we're about to get onto, so you're getting ready to get on the road. Oh yeah, hey, before I do that, I want to smith some armor and enchant this, and I also want to build a house. No, because no. But
yeah.
And right. I think maybe that's the thing too. I don't think a whole lot of DMs implement a whole lot of downtime.
That's where I was just about to go in terms of, we're talking about things that take in most cases big chunks of time, and it it'd have been one thing, like for our, I'll use our Strahd campaign as an example. Like, we haven't had time to do anything like that.
Oh no, we're
Granted,
on day 2.
Right, we're 2-3 sessions in, but like, you know, it would be more accessible if, for instance, when we get to the next town, Brandon would say, okay, you guys get to town, you're weary from your travels, so you're going to take a week and just kind of get used to the sites. If you guys want to go shopping or whatever,
Yeah.
you guys can do it in this time period. But and most people don't do that. Like, that's just, most people I've played with don't really allow for those chunks of time. It's because it's we're trying to get to this town for this reason.
Yeah.
Oh, we got to that town, we're going to see this person.
Yeah.
And that's maybe somehow that, as a DM you can build it in. Depending on who you're going to see, if you need to see the Duke, okay, well, there's a waiting list.
Yeah.
He's got appointments. He can see you guys in 10 days or whatever.
And again, I think it's going to go back to that whole talk to your DM, figure out what he's cool with, because like if like I already talked to Josh about, this is what I want to do.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm sure now that he knows that's what I want to do, there will be time implemented or written into the story, or he knows that I'm going to want to take that time to do said thing.
Well, that's like, you're not the only one who has like mentioned wanting to do things like that. Yeah. That's why, like, so in all the objectives that you guys found on Monday, we're like, okay, the gig is tomorrow, but the festival starts in a week. Yeah. Like, like, this way you guys have time to explore the city and, do what you need to do and want to do. And, I have secrets and stuff hidden throughout, everywhere.
Yeah. Well, and this to me kind of falls under, Jesse, I know kind of what your part of your background is, Josh. I'm not really sure. If you're sitting up on watch with somebody for 2 hours, you guys are gonna make small talk and learn about each other. That's just the nature of it, right? Tables I've sat at, tables I've played in, things like that, we don't really do that.
Unless you're my character on the Sunday game, because he hates everybody.
Well, right, and if that's your character,
that's
your
the character. Yeah.
But realistically, like, a lot more of that would happen, and I feel like a lot of it. Well, for me, I'll speak from my perspective. For me, it's like, I don't really want to take a half hour of our playtime and use it as a one-on-one with another character.
Yeah.
Not that it wouldn't happen, not that it's not realistic. I think it's absolutely realistic, but I just don't feel like it's.
We get together once, and this is our thing. We get together once every 2 weeks. We're not gonna spend 20 minutes talking about.
But that's really unfortunate, because that's where all that, background, character development. That's how you learn about the characters you play with. It's not like, there may be specific examples of, something happens during a fight. Just given what my character is and what your character is and where we're at, like, eventually I feel like, we're gonna have a conversation about some undeath.
Oh yeah.
Because of the prevalence, and because I have viewpoints and you have viewpoints, and we're both pretty serious about those viewpoints. Hasn't come up yet because, so far the undead that we've encountered, we've agreed on what the proper course of action is. But I'm a death cleric.
Yeah.
At some point, I'm going to start resurrecting things.
and I'm going to have a problem with it.
Yes, I fully expect that 100%, because my character has a certain viewpoint on it, and your character has a certain viewpoint on it, and it is what it is.
Yeah.
But other than examples like that where there's like specific scenarios where that kind of stuff's coming up, like I just feel like a lot of the stuff that we put into as players, our backstories and our, where our character comes from, it just doesn't come up because unless there's a real impetus for it to come up, it's just not.
Yeah.
It's not doesn't come up.
Yeah.
Yep,
I agree.
But no, I fully look forward to that. That's gonna be interesting.
I mean, I can't really talk too much shit because I just took a pack from a questionable source.
Well, and I know that you took, obviously I know that you took a level in Warlock because you sat at the table and said, I'm casting Eldritch Blast.
Yeah.
Before we get feats. So like as a player,
Yeah.
I understand that. As a character, I don't really understand what's going on, but I'm a fucking death. Like I said, I'm a death cleric, so I do all kinds of weird shit.
Yeah, he's just
Too,
like, no,
like,
that's normal.
Yeah, like no big deal. No big deal. But yeah, I find that character development choice on your part interesting. Depending on how you go into it, because when I looked at Pallylock combos, the one that made the most sense to me was Oathbreaker and Hexblade, and
Yep.
there was so much synergy with because both classes can raise undead.
Mm-hmm.
And the Oathbreakers give pretty big bonuses to their attacks and damage and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm curious to see. Now you're not taking Oathbreaker, so
Nope.
those benefits go away, and I understand that.
Yeah.
But there are still, I believe, you can raise a Spectre as Hexblade. I'm not positive.
Yeah, level 6, I think. I don't know if I'm gonna go that high, but
yeah, that's the thing. I mean, you might not go that high, and it might become a moot point. But I'm interested to see how
there's a lot on my character that nobody knows yet. Like,
well, because we haven't it really hasn't been a thing. I mean,
so
we're
where I'm breaking the trope of the paladin is this paladin is not holy. He's not.
Well, no, and
he is specifically vengeance. Like, he will get vengeance at any cost.
Right, and that's what they've done with 5e.
Mm-hmm.
Is divorce, Pallies from being lawful good.
Yep.
And said Pallies are, and I think it's really interesting. I think it's a good development because, I think that it makes a lot more sense to go that way. When you describe a lawful good Pally, I think that you're describing a very specific type of paladin.
Mm-hmm.
That believes in a very specific thing, but I think that there's a lot of kind of people, characters, whatever, that you could describe as paladins. Paladins are, basically somebody who's really serious about their creed and who, goes forth and executes that creed.
Yep.
Well, that can apply to a lot of people, Yep. So I think it's good that they went that way. But I think it opens up a lot of character development.
Yeah.
And possibilities. And I did notice I was playing Pathfinder Kingmaker because I want Baldur's Gate 3 to come out, and it's not out yet, and I'm getting impatient. So I wanted to try something to scratch that itch, and it didn't because I don't like the Pathfinder system. But what they did there was they added a different class that was basically a paladin, but didn't need to be lawful good. I didn't like that solution. I wasn't a fan.
Yeah. No. I'd like the idea of a paladin, but you have to understand that it's kind of like it's generally just the idea of alignment, right? So, and we've talked about this on multiple occasions. Alignments change. I mean, and just the idea of being good or evil, none of it's true. right? Because the perfect example, let's go with Darth Vader. All right, we know Darth Vader is a bad guy. He's fucking evil. But was he to the Empire? No, he was a fucking hero to the Empire.
Right, and that's where it gets tricky, and alignment gets really,
Mm-hmm.
you know, like if you look at how lawful is described in 5e, it's, you know, basically sticking to a code. Well, what if your code is to be chaotic? Like,
Yeah.
you know, there's a juxtaposition there where you're saying, you know, I'm lawful because I'm sticking to my code of being chaotic, which
Yeah.
is supposed to be the opposite.
My character,
Um,
my character in the Sunday game, he's lawful good, or I'm sorry, lawful neutral. He has codes. He has things that he will
yeah,
do. He will
right.
not break those codes. He's not good or evil. That's why I hate the good and evil thing. You know what I mean?
Well,
Like,
right, and like I've said before, I think that that's more of a tool for DMs to understand the motivations of NPCs.
yeah,
That's, to me, it's not really that useful of a tool for a PC.
no. In a sense, I mean, it gives direction. It
gives you
an idea.
It gives you an idea of what way you're supposed to go, but the problem is, like, as a PC, like, now as a paladin, you have an alignment, and you know, to me as a paladin, you should be strict to that alignment.
Mm-hmm.
However, even a paladin can have, you know, a crisis of faith,
Oh yeah.
which would flip that, you know, not necessarily flip the alignment, but change the alignment.
Yep.
So, yeah, I mean, there's a lot you can go into there, but I feel like we've covered that in previous episodes.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's interesting, and that's what D&D is.
Yep. Well, it is past 11 o'clock. So what I'm gonna do is we're gonna end this tonight. I am gonna say, first off, we have finished chapter 8, so we will be going on to chapter 9. And Josh, that is a fun one. Magic.
Wrong.
What?
Combat.
Fuck combat. Fuck combat.
It's gonna be like 3-4 episodes right there.
Yeah. Shit. I thought we said magic. I got
Magic
excited.
Man.
After combat, we
Yeah,
need
you
to get
did.
Becky.
Fucking combat. Just 3 episodes right there. All right. But that being said, fuck DMs. Seriously, give your players some downtime. Let them make some shit. Let them craft some shit out of leather. You know, let them make some swords. Let them make some potions, dildos. I don't care. Just give them the time. Give them the time to do that.
Well, and I think that there's precedent for this, and I don't think it's that, you know, depending on what median you want to use as an example, you know, not that it's days on end necessarily, but if you want to use Lord of the Rings, they get to Rivendell, they have downtime.
Yep.
They take several days, you know, to convene, and that's the thing is, downtime doesn't necessarily mean that you're not doing anything. It's just like, you know, I think the books define it as, you know, an 8-hour workday. Well, we all work 8-hour workdays. It's not like that's all we do all fucking day,
Yeah.
right? Like, there's other shit that we can get done during that. Now, we can't go travel and do all that kind of stuff during downtime. That's a different thing. But
Yep.
you know, or even, you know, if you want to go with Star Wars, Star Wars tends to go with a model that, you know, if you really look at it, most Star Wars movies cover a few days.
Yeah.
But there's downtime in between that.
Yep.
You know, so
The downtime's the shit you're not gonna see.
right, or you might see, but it's not. It's, you know, like I use Lord of the Rings. You see what they do in their downtime. It's just kind of jumping scenes, you know, and might go a couple days later. This happens. A couple days or a couple hours, anyways. Whatever, you know. So.
But DMs, give them the time. Give them the damn time. Stop being an asshole. Give
Yeah,
me the
I
damn
don't
time.
think it's. I don't. I think not that you have to, but I think
No.
that it's not a bad idea, and you shouldn't. Your players shouldn't feel like they're reinforced into anything. If they want to run through a campaign, they should be able to run through a campaign.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's a bad idea to say, "Oh, you guys got to a new town." You know, just like we've done for years and years and years, regardless of what video game you want to talk about. What's the first thing when you get to a new town? You got to go sell all the shit that you picked up on the way,
Yep.
buy new shit, deal with your leveling, deal with, whatever you got to do depending on what game you're playing. That's
Yep.
all downtime activities, as far as I'm concerned.
Yep.
Also, next character that I play, most likely in the one-off, is going to fight with nothing but dildos. Thanks a lot, Jesse.
Yeah, no problem.
Just pick up Tavern Brawler so you get those bonuses to improvise weapons.
Exactly.
It's gonna be a giant Goliath with giant black dildos.
Black dildos. Wow, I would have gone with fucking Sparkle Unicorn.
I was gonna say they're just gonna
That's
be,
his
like,
battle axe.
giant. Yeah.
It's
Okay.
just a
He's gonna be a centaur.
just a unicorn head with a big veiny penis.
Just have different sized dildos that you call different weapon names.
Oh, we have
That's
gone.
my arrow.
All right, that's my cue. That's my cue. We went dark. We went weird. Can't. I mean, I can, but we.
You live in the fucking dark. What are you talking about, kid?
Yeah, this is my life now. All right, guys. Thanks for joining us. Everybody that watches us on YouTube, don't forget to like, subscribe, hit the notification button, and join us. If you want to just join us on, Let's Roll Dungeon Talk, make sure to hit us up on Wednesdays at 8:30. That's when we're going to start. If you want to check out some of the crafting, you can check out some of the old videos, or you can stop by. We're going to be doing some stuff with that. If you want to see us play D&D, you can see me play every Monday, Josh every other Monday. Well, I DM, but I consider that playing. And then hopefully soon we'll get this one-off thing going, Anthony, and we'll get you in.
Yeah, like I'll wait till we're off air, but I'm gonna start stumping to get that scheduled.
Yeah, we will do that. But with all that said, all right, kids, don't forget, Let's Roll, or I'm sorry, twitch.tv/Let's Roll D&D. You can catch us live. Yeah, that's all I got. So, bye, internets.
Bye.
Bye.